We recently went on a cruise ship that was almost 20 years old, and even though the cruise line website said it had been refurbished recently, well, when we got on board, it wasn't exactly as we expected. In this video, I'm going to share the things that you'll want to know before you go on an older cruise ship. Hi there, I'm Ilana from the website lifewellcruise.com. Welcome back to my channel. Now, if you've been thinking about cruising on an older cruise ship, this video is definitely for you. We recently came back from a cruise on board Royal Caribbean's Freedom of the Seas. We really had a very good time. But there are some things that I do wish I knew before I went on this cruise ship that would have helped me to know a little bit more about what to expect. Now, this is not all bad. In fact, there are some really positive things about going on an older cruise ship that you'll probably want to know as well. Now, before I get started, I did want to mention that if you like this video, if you find it helpful, informative, or enjoyable in any way, then please do give this video a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Let's get started. By the way, we just got back from our cruise in Florida about a week ago, and it is cold and gray outside. So, which is why I'm wearing my really very wintry sweater. Please let me know what the temperature is where you are living right now down in the comments below. Okay, so let's start off with some of the more negative things that you should know before cruising on an older cruise ship. Even if a cruise ship has been refurbished, there are going to be some areas that are going to look dated. In other words, not everywhere on the cruise ship is usually going to be refurbished. Now, we definitely did notice this on board Freedom of the Seas. Some of the areas almost looked like new. The carpeting was completely changed. The banisters were gleaming, and that definitely was something nice. A lot of the public areas were really very nice, the lounges and such. And other areas looked like they had been forgotten, almost like they were part of a time capsule of sort. Now, it didn't make the cruise bad, but it is something to be aware of even when you do see on a cruise line website that a cruise ship has been refurbished. Now, I do have a little bit of a tip. All cruise ships are going to be different. So something that you will want to do is look at some of the videos, really recent ones that you'll find on YouTube, and you'll get a realistic idea of what to expect when you do board your specific cruise ship. Number 2, the cabin may look dated, and this is really likely unless the cruise ship has had their cabins actually completely refurbished. We've actually been on a cruise in the last year. It was on Norwegian Pearl, where the cabins were completely refurbished. They looked really like new, but most of the time this is not going to be the case. Now, in the case of our cabin on Royal Caribbean's Freedom of the Seas, it really was like going back in time a little bit. So keep that in mind, that you may have a cabin that looks 15 to 20 years old in terms of the decor. And even though the mattress has been updated and maybe the bedding has been updated, oftentimes the curtains and the color of the carpets, while that might have been changed out over the years, it is really going to look perhaps a little bit old-fashioned. Now, in the case of our cabin, we did find that there really was some wear and tear in terms of the carpet. It was a little bit stained, a little bit torn. The sofa even looked, well, very worn. Weird storage space in the cabin. Now, we actually found there was a fair amount of space in the cabin for storage, but it definitely is different than on newer, more modern cruise ships. Now, in particular, in the closet, there are wire shelves. That isn't something that personally bothers me at all. But what we did find is near the desk area, instead of having open shelving the way you'll see in a lot of modern cruise ships, what you need to do is actually look behind the mirrors for sort of these little hidden nooks and crannies and storage areas that you'll find. Tiny bathrooms. Now, this is definitely something that we noticed was the most different from newer cruise ships. Cruise lines are really making the cabin bathrooms a lot better in terms of storage and in terms of really the feel of the cabin and the shower nowadays versus, well, the olden days. And definitely this was one of the smallest bathrooms that we have cruised in years, and we definitely did notice. I have to say, this is definitely a case where I was so glad I brought my hanging toiletry bag and other things to really organize my space in my bathroom. Now, something unfortunately that a lot of older cruise ships have in the bathroom is you may find that the shower is not only small, but you have a shower curtain rather than a glass door, or you'll have glass doors, but it really is these sort of small, tight, cube-like glass doors that make the space feel, and actually it is, quite small. Now, while this isn't specifically a Freedom of the Seas review, I will be the first one to say that our cabin bathroom was really in very poor condition. This is not necessarily something I think that you should expect on an older cruise ship, but unfortunately it was something that we did see in this bathroom. By the way, in terms of a review of our cruise on Freedom of the Seas, that will be coming shortly. Okay, I have one more point about the cabin. This is pretty important no matter what older cruise ship that you're on, and then we'll move on to other parts of the cruise ship. Expect the lack of electric plugs and USB outlets. Of course, it makes a lot of sense back 15, 20, 25 years ago. Well, of course, people were not charging all of their different devices, so this is something that you are just not going to find in those older cruise ship cabins that have not been refurbished. So make sure that you do bring something like a non-surge protected power bar or cube. I will leave my recommendation link down below in the description of this video in case you do want to check it out. Or you can also bring an international travel adapter, which is a great cruise cabin hack that you can use. Sporadic Wi-Fi. Now, this is something that we've actually experienced on quite a few older cruise ships, even when they have been extensively refurbished. The fact is that the cruise ships are old, the wiring, I guess. Anyway, maybe if you know the reasons, please let me know down in the comments below. But we've definitely found that the Wi-Fi is better on newer cruise ships generally. Now, in particular, on Freedom of the Seas, for some reason, our Wi-Fi hardly worked from inside our cruise ship cabin. Now, we actually sometimes needed to open our door to the hallway to be able to access Wi-Fi on our phones. The decor, and something that I never hear anyone ever talk about, the lighting on older cruise ships. This is something that I actually do notice on older cruise ships. Instead of the whiter LED style lights that we have now, that we've all grown accustomed to, a lot of times the older cruise ships do have that yellowy kind of light, and I do find, I guess because I take so many photos, I do particularly notice it. Now, again, this is not the end of the world, but just something to expect. Now, I do have some really good points, but there was one other thing that we did find, well, it kind of caught us off guard on Freedom of the Seas, because I haven't seen this in years. It was a key card entry at our cabin door. And what I mean is really having to put a key card into a slot. I haven't seen this even at hotels in years. It definitely did surprise me on our cruise on an older cruise ship. Okay, so now for the really good points about cruising on an older cruise ship. Grand dining rooms. Now, I admit I miss the beautiful grand dining rooms of those older cruise ships. I love them. It makes me feel like I'm eating somewhere really special. I love eating in the main dining room in the evening in particular. It just feels, I don't know, it just feels fancy a little bit. And definitely Freedom of the Seas has a gorgeous 3-story dining room that I absolutely still love, and I hope they never change. A happy and relaxed crew. Now, this might surprise you, but in speaking with many crew members over the years, many of them told us that their favorite cruise ships to work on are actually those older and those smaller cruise ships. They actually tell us that not only is work a little bit easier, there are fewer passengers than on those larger cruise ships, but they say that they really become like family, that many people, many of the crew members actually return to the same cruise ship again and again. And we have found oftentimes that the service and that the overall vibe on older cruise ships is just a little bit happier, at least when it comes to the crew. Please let me know if you've ever noticed that before when you are cruising on some of the older cruise ships down in the comments below. New ship features being incorporated into those older cruise ships. Now, even though you are sailing on an older cruise ship, it doesn't mean that everything has stayed the same from 15 or 20 years ago, because with every refurbishment, oftentimes cruise lines really do incorporate some of the new features of newer cruise ships onto those older cruise ships. So for example, the entire sports area and activities area on Freedom of the Seas, it is pretty amazing, and they've really incorporated so much. They have water slides on the cruise ship. And you can expect newer specialty restaurants, lounges, and more. No reserving shows in advance. Now, I admit, even though I love those newer cruise ships, in particular when it comes to Royal Caribbean or even Norwegian Cruise Line, some of those cruise lines where you have to reserve your shows in advance, I don't really love that because I like to feel relaxed on my cruise, and I like to feel like I'll go if I feel like it. I may not go. If I don't, I'll choose which night I go. So I don't like to really have to plan in advance to that extent. I realize it's something we have to do for those bigger cruise ships. It absolutely makes sense from a crowd control standpoint, but I do love that on those older cruise ships, you just show up for the shows and the entertainment that you want to go to. Great food, dining, and bars. Now, something that we found on all of our cruises on older cruise ships is just because the cruise ship was old didn't mean that the food, the drinks, the service wasn't amazing, because it was. We actually had really good food, in particular in the main dining room and of course in the specialty restaurants on Royal Caribbean's Freedom of the Seas. But we had a similar experience on cruises on Celebrity Summit in the past, on Norwegian Pearl in the past. We just absolutely loved the food in the main dining room, and really even in terms of the drinks, etc. Just because the cruise ship is old didn't mean any of that was affected in a negative way. Less bells and whistles, but no lack of fun, entertainment, and activities. Now, this is something that we absolutely noticed. There was incredible entertainment on Freedom of the Seas. Really fantastic. I can't even imagine. I know it does even get better maybe on newer cruise ships, but we had no lack of entertainment. There was an ice skating show that was one of the best cruise ship entertainment venues, activities, whatever you want to call it, one of the very best. I was so entertained. I stayed awake the whole time, so that is great. There was the quest. There were shows in the theater. There was an illusionist or a magician. Oh my goodness. It was absolutely phenomenal entertainment. And even during the day, the activities, well, the cruise director and all the activity staff, they were so enthusiastic and kept everybody busy and happy at all times. Price. Now, who are we kidding? Those newer cruise ships are expensive. And if you go on an older cruise ship, you are going to get a much better value cruise. And that definitely is something to consider when you are choosing a cruise vacation. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Please let me know, what are some of your thoughts about cruising on an older cruise ship, good or bad? Please let me know down in the comments below. Now, I hope that you did enjoy this video. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Bye for now, and happy cruising.